Hello, you're listening to the abridged version of Book Shambles. If you'd like to hear the full-length version of Book Shambles and also get loads of other extra treats and bits and pieces, then why not go to patreon.com/bookshambles. Anyway, here's the abridged version with loads of really interesting things that were cut out. I mean, there's lots of interesting things you're still going to hear, but some of the things you're missing out on.
Hello and welcome to Book Shambles. Producer Trent here. We'll get on to today's episode in just a moment. Robin chatting to author Zena Barry. But first, a thank you to our Patreon supporters. Remember, you can become a Patreon supporter of this podcast at patreon.com/bookshambles to get extended episodes each and every week, support everything we do at the Cosmic Shambles Network, and get lots of extra goodies and bonus offers on tickets to our live shows and all that sort of stuff. Speaking of live shows, coming up is 5 shows of 9 lessons and carols for curious people. Robin hosting every night. The usual mix of science, comedy, music, literature, poetry, and everything else really. Lasers, probably. They're all at King's Place on December 10, 11. There's a matinee on the 11th as well, a family show, and the 17th and the 18th. Lots of guests, including Chris Lintott and Helen Chesky and Izzy Sooty, Mark Watson, Jocelyn Bell Burnell, Chris Jackson, Miranda Lowe, and lots of others as well. And then on December 14, this year's Brian Cox and Robin Ince's Christmas Compendium of Reason is at the Royal Albert Hall. Profits from that show and all the 9 lesson shows will be going to charity as ever. Robin and Brian will have a host of amazing secret surprise guests for the Albert Hall show. Tickets for all those events are available now. And now, without any further ado, here is Robin and Zena.
Anyway, welcome. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on your time of listening to this. This is Josie and Robin's Book Shambles, which is currently just with me because Josie is she's very busy with some things, and I hope all of you saw, obviously, our appearance on Pointless Celebrities. I would imagine it will now lead to us getting an enormous number of offers from television people. I imagine they will be absolutely flooding in. Let us never forget such excellent answers as Arundhati Roy and Eve Ferret. Both excellent. And also mention the fact that, because I've got a podcast, I can use it to plug my own books. Don't forget that The Importance of Being Interested is out now. You can get it in an audio version or you can get it in a hardback version. It all seems to be going quite well. I've done about, at the time of recording this, I've now been to 70 different independent bookshops to do talks, and I think I've worked out that I've got 38 to go. So I might see you at one of those events. If I don't, well, I think that's a sad thing, but let's not worry about it too much. Anyway, welcome to this morning's author, who's written one of my favourite books of the last few years. And the reason that I wanted to get her on this was because sometimes you read a book and you think, I want everyone to read this. And I'm determined to get everyone listening to this to go and buy this book, because it is a book that is wonderful and funny and sad and beautiful. And it's also it feels beautifully real, and just the characters in it, Maud, who's the lead character, just is fully realised pretty much from page 1. So please welcome Zena Barry. Hello, Zena.
That was very nice, thank you.
So let's start off with Your Friend Forever, which is about, well, this is always a tricky thing, isn't it, when you start off, how much of Maud is teenage you?
Well, probably maybe 95%.
And
something around that.
And what brought you? I mean, because I don't know if you remember, I have a fantastic book called Starlust. Do you remember Starlust?
No.
It was letters from fans. Came out in the late 70s, early 80s, and it was letters to Barry Manilow, people with kind of strange fantasies about Boy George, where a surprising number of fans really didn't work out his sexuality.
No, I didn't.
And things like, sometimes when I'm thinking of Michael Jackson, I look at the moon and I wonder if Michael Jackson's looking at the moon at exactly the same time, and I have all this connection. And it's filled with that kind of, really febrile and tense. Sometimes, just all of that adoration when you are lost in pop music. So where were you lost in pop music?
So I think for me, I wrote letters all the time to everybody, pop stars, but also other people. So like Peter Sissons, I wrote to. I would just sort of latch on. I would latch on to people, and then not be able to unlatch. And I think it was because I think I had quite a strange upbringing with a lot of shouting, and so I sort of went very, very deeply back into my head and sort of stayed inside my head rather than. Do you ever have that thing where you're looking at things and you feel like you're watching TV and it's actually happening in front of you?
Yeah, I know what you mean. That kind
You
of
know what I mean? But you're
detachment. Yeah,
so deeply inside your head. Like there was an incident, Michelle and I once, it was New Year's Eve and we were in a pub in Shoreditch, and a man came in and just started stabbing people with a massive knife. And it was a weird moment of just thinking, oh, is this like that? It felt like watching a film. And then we realized that we were in it and then had to leave quite quickly by like scrambling over tables and things. But yeah, I quite often have that thing of just watching things and I feel like I'm very far back in my own head. And so I would write lots of letters to people. I was not sort of dealing with the life that was happening around me. I was like completely, oh, it's hard to describe, completely sort of shut myself off from that, built like a little wall there, and then just concentrated on writing letters to anybody that I'd sort of latched onto and thought, oh, this person will understand this idea that I've had about this thing. So I'm going to write to them. And that felt very cathartic.
that's very
Yeah.
interesting. That sense of when you of a kind of viewer detachment, where you're almost in the stalls, as you were saying, or you're in, and you just go, because I can definitely understand that. That, I mean, it made me think of, when after the Twin Towers were attacked, the speed in which many people started to talk of it as almost a cinematic event. To,
Yeah.
that detachment from the reality of the pain. And were there any? I mean, apart from Peter Sissons, which is a really fascinating one. Peter Sissons, was he doing the BBC News at the time?
Yeah, I think he might have done like the 6 o'clock news, but he seemed like a nice man.
Was
Um,
that what would have drawn you to that, like that idea that oh, this would be someone that would be good to be good to be a figure who would be in my life, who would be, oh, it would be great if I had
yeah, I
Peter
think I
Sissons
was,
looking
yeah,
after me.
I think I was looking for parental figures who might have, be able to sort of tell me what to do. I think I wrote to the Queen. I wrote to John Major. I don't know what about. Just whatever happened. Like the letters would go into the post box every day, like a few every day, here, there, and everywhere. So it was just a constant stream of sending letters off into the world for a really long time.
Sad thing is, of course, that if the computers were around at the time, not that you're particularly old, but it's like computers are. It's only in the last 20 years, isn't it? Where
Mm.
that's regular, that we would all know all of the letters and what the content was. And was there any? I mean, what about replies? I mean, was it generally you'd get thank you for your reply? Here's a thank you for your letter. Here's a signed photo, or did
Yeah,
anyone actually connect with you in terms of anything that you wrote?
well, um, no, not really. No, Kellogg's. Kellogg's wrote back to me. They started sending me packages of you know on the back of the Kellogg's boxes where there would be like you can collect 8 tokens and send off for this not very good thing, or you can collect 8 tokens and then a postal order for like £10 or something, and then they send you this good thing. So I used to just write long letters to them, and then they would send me the good thing that I hadn't sent a postal order for.
Oh, that's good. That's a
So that
nice.
was that someone there was quite sweet. Um, yeah, but nobody really, no one really did. Not even Andy Bell. I wrote to Andy Bell a lot.
Oh, so Andy Bell would probably be the highest in terms of the person you were most interested in, or the music, or whatever the connection you got from them.
Yeah, I was pretty big on Andy Bell. Yeah, and I sort of, yeah, had like a tape, so I would have to like try and listen to him whilst I go to sleep, but it only had 2 songs on it, so it wasn't long enough to go to sleep, so you'd have to listen to it, then turn over, play the B-side, then just keep turning it over until eventually drift away to the sound of Andy Bell.
Which one was that?
That was, I think it might have been Am I Right?
Oh, I don't know that one.
I think it was, I think that one was from the Chorus LP. I also had Hue and Cry's My Salt Heart on Single, which also 2 songs.
Single is what a beautiful thing that is, to think that, if I showed any of my singles to my son, I think he would, Dad, what kind of age did you live in? What kind of clunky age of ploughs and cranks was this?
Mm.
And you've
But
got
they
Hugh.
were so nice though, because you'd really appreciate the song then, wouldn't you? Because if you had just that one song, you would listen to Buggery.
But I think there is a different thing, that even though you're younger than me, you're still, I would have thought, of the generation where music was the predominant definer of so much of our existence. And I think I might be wrong to say radio meant more, but certainly all of those possible connections and those possible DJs. And I mean, because it does seem so strange now for neither of us, I think, go back so far that we're that really weird age of the DJ, where on Radio 1 they were kind of seen as icons. Do you think people that the worship for some of these people was and you look and you go, what on earth? These kind of like creepy door-to-door salesmen from a Dennis Potter play were somehow they were seen as, don't forget, come to the Radio 1 Roadshow. We're going to be in Swanage. Then you're going to be having Smiley Miley. All of that's kind of strange excitement. You can almost see the sickness of England, can't you, just by looking at the kind of But yeah, it's a strange world. I mean, obviously, I ended up only it was the late night DJs that were the ones that I went for. But I see you've got Hue and Cry poster behind you.
Yeah, I recently rescued that from my mum's house. It was covered in mold, and I managed to just scrub it off, and there they were underneath, and I've still got the little signed bit that's from 1994.
And
I did go and see them 2 weeks ago, and they were great.
Yeah, well, he's quite interesting, isn't he, now? Because that's Pat Kane, isn't it? And because he became TV director. I'd worked on something with him as a TV director, and I've got his book, The Play Ethic, as well.
Yes, yeah,
which
I read
is really
that.
interesting.
It's really interesting. It's quite a hard read because he's so academic, isn't he?
Yeah.
Massively academic. He did a thing at Salford Quays a couple of years ago. No, probably 5 or 6 years ago, actually. Which I saw listed that he was doing some lecture. So there's me and my friend Faye who have been going to see them for like 30 years now. And we always get together and we go and see Hue and Cry. And I said, oh, he's doing this thing, come along with me. And then at the very last minute, she couldn't go. I didn't really know what it was because I hadn't really looked. And it was a lecture, and it was very, very dense. And there was only me and a security guard. And that was quite an awkward 2 hours. So I was baffled by most of it. But the bits I understood were really, really interesting.
Yeah, I did something with him, the Cambridge Festival of Light. He was organising an event, and he asked me if I'd write a 45-minute lecture on light bulb jokes. So I did.
Oh, how did you?
Yeah. I don't know what I've done with it. I've got all these weird lectures that I've written in the past, and I've got a huge compilation of the strangest, kind of the most philosophical and esoteric light bulb jokes. I should really return to those light bulb jokes. I think that might be my destiny in the end. So this is... when did you start wanting to write Your Friend Forever? Because this is your first novel. And like I said, I think it is very, very full. And it is... And you deal with so many ideas as well. There's so much in there. And what I loved about it was I could see people would read this book and they would be able to empathise. And I could see it being more than an entertainment, that people would find it really helpful to be able to walk through this mind, walk through some of the battles that Maud has to go through as we jump into the kind of, we go from her youth into then, being a grown up and the things that haven't worked out. And so when did you decide you wanted to start writing it?
Well, I sort of had it in the back of my mind for years. And I've always quite liked an epistolary novel, I think because I don't have a huge attention span, so it quite suits me. And when I turned 40, I thought, God, come on, Zena. So I went on an Arvon course, but at that point, I didn't know it was going to be a funny thing because I'd completely forgotten, entirely forgotten that I wrote funny things. Even though I did, and when I was at uni, I wrote plays and I wrote funny plays. And as you know, I've worked in and around comedy for years, but I'd completely forgotten that I had this voice, that I could write like that. And after 5 days at Arvon, which was great because it was strangers and there's no expectations of you. Nobody knows who you are and you can just sort of be quite anonymous. And by the end of the few days, we'd all sort of worked each other out a little bit, and I was the one who wrote the funny things. So because we all read to each other in the evenings what we'd been writing during the day, and that was so helpful to me because it kind of made me remember all these things and then think, oh right, that's what I do. I'd just entirely forgotten that. And it was just nice to meet people and then, remember that I'm a person in the world, because you can lose yourself quite easily as an adult with children and relationships and all sorts of things. And it was really life-affirming experience. And then to come back sort of thinking, yes, I know who I am again, I've remembered.
That's such an interesting thing. I was talking about that with someone the other day, where when my mum died and I found, we were going through stuff and I found all these letters from when she was probably only about 20 years old. And it was someone who I never knew, which I think is really, that bit of all of that. And I think that, I wonder about that with my dad who is still around, but the fact that he had a period of time where he worked in rep theatre and he's got loads of stories. And it's only a few years, but that somehow working out the continuity of the human being who might get lost is a really interesting thing to me. And I think that is why some people in middle age are so angry and so, and sometimes hating so many other people. And always, when you see some of the stuff, whether it's journalists or whether it's social media, you think how much of this is a rage, because those excitements when you're about 15 years old and you're having a sleepover and you're there with your friend and it's dark and you're just talking and the talk is all about future possibilities and where you're going to go and what you're going to do and all the things you love, because there's in some of those sleepovers there's just such an incredible amount of freedom of possibility, isn't there?
Yeah, which becomes, it can feel like it's becoming less and less and less. Like now I know, I'm 45 now and I know I'm never going to be a surgeon.
I don't think that was ever your destiny, personally. I've known you for what now? Nearly 20 years. And in fact, 20 years probably, pretty much.
Yeah.
And I know I shouldn't believe in the Victorian science of physiognomy or any of those things. You were one of the ones that never struck me as a surgeon.
Yeah.
Not as much as I've struck myself that I'm most definitely not a surgeon. I haven't got the nerve. But I think, But in terms of the writing side of it, that is what were your thinking of those kind of moments where sometimes you just be, with your best friend. And of course, you've worked with Michelle. I should say for the listeners, Michelle also. The first time I met Zena and Michelle, they used to run a fantastic theatre in Camden where loads of us went and did kind of tried out our new shows called the Etc. Theatre, and then gone on to Camden Fringe and Manchester Fringe. And you always had such a kind of sense of a team, of a double act. You were the Cagney and Lacey, I think, of North London Fringe Theatre.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, and yeah, we still are, but it's more pop round every so often. We'll have a cup of tea. So what we're going to do. Sometimes I bump into her when she's running. Now she's always just straight past me. But the other day I bumped into her and she was wearing pink glittery wellies and dinosaur print, what do you call them, dungarees.
Not changed a bit.
So she's got the play ethic.
So do you battle for your play ethic then? Do you think? I mean, because you said you've got a lot, you have a lot to try and juggle to find the space to be yourself, to be well, actually, not be yourself, but to be that self, that playful, creative self.
Yeah. I think not so much anymore. I think as my daughter's got a bit older, and so like I've got a friend called Laura who every so often we drive to Haworth, or we meet each other in Haworth on the moors, and we dress up as clowns and we do hexes and we scream, we roll around in the mud, and we just go a bit nuts. So sometimes we stay in a little B&B there, and we'll sleep in the bed dressed as clowns, and I know that sounds really weird and possibly mentally ill, but it's just our way of playing, and it's really, really nice.
I've seen really far worse kind of hen night behaviour or stag night behaviour than dressing up as clowns and rolling around in the mud. I think that sounds fantastic. It seems to have many different levels to it as well. I mean, it even has a kind of Billy Smart's version of the film Midsummer about it.
I've not watched that.
Oh, okay. Probably don't, actually. Or maybe do. I mean, it's a great film, but it's long, and I don't want it to get in the way of your clowning either. So this is when you started writing. So let's go through... Going through Maud, as you said, very much, you feel that it is 95% you in terms of when Maud's a teenager. When you were writing, were there any points where you thought, this bit of writing is very cathartic, but this bit of writing is too close? That sense of, I think, for many people's first novel, where you go, oh, hang on a minute, this is my life, and I need to just detach myself a little bit further from the narrative that I'm creating.
Yeah, I mean, definitely I did the thing of, I didn't set it in Bury, but I set it in Preston, which is like a similar market town, and I set it a few years, Maud's a few years older than me, so I thought that way nobody will guess that it's anything to do with me. I mean, I haven't told my mum about it, put it that way, because that wouldn't go down well. So yeah, but I found the second half much harder to write, I think, because I'm closer to all of that, and I found it very easy to write in young Maud's voice. That came really easily to me, but the second half it was really hard, even though when I was writing it, Maud was 42 and I was 42, but trying to get that voice was really difficult. Trying to get that thing of she's the same person, but 30 years have gone by. And yeah, I found that really difficult, and that was probably more painful to write than the first bit. But the whole thing was quite therapeutic, probably.
Finding that voice is such an interesting thing, because it was Rebecca Payton, a friend of mine who we've had on, I hope we've had on Book Shambles, who she wrote a play called Sometimes I Laugh Like My Sister. Her dad died when she was 6, and then her sister was murdered when she was in her mid-30s. And Rebecca once told me this. I found it so fascinating because I've known her for years and years and years, and I knew her when before her sister was murdered. But it was after that point that I began to know her. If you see what I mean, that was when she wrote this play, which was predominantly about the experience in her mind of what happened when her sister was murdered. She walked off stage after the first day, and she went up to her co-writer, the guy who helped her write it, and said, I know whose voice that was. Now I know who wrote that play. And he was like, oh, I thought that was, it's your voice. And she said it was the 6-year-old that no one listened to when her dad died. And I thought that to me is such an incredible, why the power of writing and why the power of you going off to Arvon and doing those things should never be in any way dismissed, is because if you, or even I think of, in the autobiographical work of what Alan Davis has managed to do with his most recent book, again after doing a writing course, and suddenly he had the tools to deal with an incredibly, a story which is a deeply disturbing story, and
I
have
not read that yet because I don't think I can read it. I read, Lem Cisse's book. That was a similar, well, not similar, but tales of children having a horrible time. It's quite a tough read, isn't it? Yeah. Oh God, the bit at the end of that book when he finds the typewriter outside his door.
Yeah, it's such a great, such an important book. That I would say that, and I would highly recommend Kerry Hudson's Lowborn as well.
Yeah, I've read that as well. Yeah, she's great.
What about in terms of your? Because as you said, you found your funny voice again. Because I've always found you very funny. I think you have very funny. You are very funny. And that bit of when you were writing that reader, who were the influences for you when you were growing up? Were the certain, like, I mean, I did mention that there is, and it's probably a cliche to say, but you did create a teenage voice that to me was as authentic as what Sue Townsend did with Adrian Mole. Adrian Mole, when I first read that, those first 2 books in particular, it's so, she so managed to get into the skin of that boy. So who were you reading when you were growing up, when you were a teenager?
Oh well, I read and absolutely adored the Adrian Mole books, and my daughter's reading them now, and it's such a pleasure. She keeps shouting me from her bedroom saying, what does wanton mean, and what does what's lust, and what my loins, and all these sort of words that he was coming out with. So she's really enjoying those, and she's asked me to get her all the other ones for Christmas, so that was really nice. But I read I was obsessed with Enid Blyton books, and I was quite young, but that was like the Mallory Towers, the 6 Mallory Towers books. And for example, on a Saturday, I would sit down in a chair and I would read all 6 of them. And for me, that meant I'd spent the whole day at Mallory Towers with these girls who I quite like, most of them, apart from Gwendolyn Mary, who everyone hated. But so I got to spend the day with Daryl and Sally, and Alicia with her jokes that she'd get from her brothers, and so I would spend the whole time there rather than in this bit of a madhouse that I was actually in. And then I got in. Then I had my older brother Craig. He was really into Stephen King, so I went straight from Enid Blyton to like Misery and The Stand and all of these horror books. So it was either Enid Blyton or Stephen King, really. So then all my stories at school, I started writing in American, and I'm getting told off for that, and writing some really sort of lots of really gruesome horror stories about people being like raped by devils and things like that. So there wasn't, there wasn't much else to read, apart from like the encyclopedias, which I didn't really do.
So what was your favourite? Stephen King is the one that really stuck with you.
Oh, the Stand, the really, really big one, because there was a character in it, I think he's called Nick, who's a deaf mute. I really attached to him. I would probably have written to him if I'd have thought he was a real person. And then he got killed. Oh, and I really liked Thomas Hardy as well. I was quite into Thomas Hardy.
Thomas Hardy's an intro, but isn't it? Because again, for a teenager, I remember reading Tess when I was a teenager, and that's a hell of a lot to go through, isn't it? And that anger, that annoyance, because I always want to jump into books when I'm getting really frustrated. I want to go in there and go, what do you do? Like talking about the books by Kerry and Lem, but also in fiction sometimes. The placing of the letter where it slides under the carpet so it's not found. And it's like every time you watch a film where there's a bad ending, and each time you think maybe this time though. Maybe this time they won't get in that car, or maybe this time they won't go in that direction, or maybe this time all of that. And I think, do you? Because that's the interesting thing, is it? One of the beautiful things about literature is that bit of empathising so deeply with something that has come from someone's mind, that has not existed in a reality beyond the reality of their mind. But sometimes that thing, I think, I shouldn't worry. I'm like, some things I can barely watch at all because I'm just rolled up, even though I know this is not real, and I know these are actors, and I know these are characters, or whatever they might be.
Yeah, there's a new thing on Netflix called The Maid or something like that. And I started watching that the other day, where she tries to escape from her partner with her child, and then she leaves the child with her mum, and then the mum phones up the husband and just lets him come and collect the child. And I just thought, oh my God, I can't watch this. This is just too stressful, very stressed. So yeah, I had to turn that one off.
I think the older I've got, the more I go, I don't want to go through stress. I don't want to, and there seems to be a huge number of dramas of late, which are about parents who never know if their missing child is the missing child, the lost child. Again, why do I want to go through that? No, I watch Steve Merchant's Outlaws, which is still quite stressful at times.
Is it?
But also has Steve Merchant in a very rude scene at one point, which was quite oh yes, I know, yes, he's in a car park and one thing leads to another. Anyway, it ends of course in full slapstick way, but it's very different to the comedy we talked about when we did an event about Laurel and Hardy, I can tell you that much. This would not have happened to Stan, for sure.
There was no eggs and nuts. Or was there eggs?
Well, unfortunately, from a Freudian perspective, you have very much put a terrible image in people's heads. What are you reading at the moment?
Right, so I've just started this, which my clown friend Laura got me for my birthday.
A Witch by Rebecca Tammas.
It's poetry, and it's quite visceral. The first poem in it is about hexing men's penises.
All right, hard-boiled eggs and nuts again, I presume, is probably the hex words that are used.
Yeah, I've just finished this by Katie Wicks.
Oh, yeah. Oh, Katie, that's good. Another one where you must have wanted to leap into that one.
Yeah, weirdly, very weirdly, and I've never told her this, but when I was writing my book and I was picturing Maud's best friend Sarah, in my head, she looked like Katie Wicks. That's who I pictured. And I don't really know Kate. I mean, I've met her a few times over the years at the etc. and whatnot. But for some reason she was in my head, and then reading that I thought, there's a lot of similarities, I think, in some ways. Read that recently, Sheila Heti. I
don't know if that's how should a person be? This is tell me about that.
It's very when someone writes something that is all from inside their mind. So it's not like there was a beautiful gate and it was tall and it was brown and there was flowers all over it. Nothing like that. I don't really like that kind of writing. It's more I was thinking this, I was having this horrible thought about this person, and then I did this, and then I did this. And when you read it, you think that's 95% what she's done, and then she's just changed a few bits here and there, but mostly it's her, and it's navel gazing, really, but just wonderful. And I'm really big on Miranda July, who it turns out is best friends with Sheila Heti, and she writes like just really weird stories, but really from a cerebral point of view, rather than a look at this thing, this was the man was doing this thing and he said that and then she said that. It's all like the inner world.
So that's what you want, again, like you were saying, when you had that experience in the pub, and also as when you were younger as well. That, and I don't know whether retreat is the right word, because retreat suggests that there's some kind of sense of surrender, whereas I don't necessarily think there is actually in spending a lot of time in your mind. I think that's a kind of a typical, rather English approach to be, you spend too much time thinking, that kind of rather grotesque attitude. But that's interesting, because to me that is the most fascinating. Did you ever read Emma McBride's A Girl is a Half-Formed Thing?
Oh, no.
That's quite it's a really disturbing kind of book in which you are in someone's mind. And it's one of those fascinating books that when it came out, it won an award. And so then lots of people put it in their reading groups. And then people went, what? Oh, God, this is, so either it's a 5-star, 1-star book. People get really cross because they've not read a book like that before, and they're furious. Why did this win the special prize? I'm very angry about that. So that I'm really fascinated in that fact, that just... Because I think I like that most of all. I want to know how someone's mind's working. I prefer that than just going, someone's having a rip-roaring adventure. We were in a fast car. It was really fast. It was brilliant. And I had all guns and everything. I would much rather read about, meanwhile, while he had the gun and he was in the fast car, he was also experiencing homosexual panic. That's the kind of thing that...
Yeah, definitely. I definitely like that. And I really like Patti Smith's writing. Because it's very relaxing to read her, because nothing happens. She's just sort of going backwards and forwards to the coffee shop to have some black coffee and a piece of toast dipped in olive oil. And if you just read it and think, oh yeah, maybe I could be the kind of person that goes to a coffee shop and has black coffee, and didn't do that because I would want milk and butter. But it's very... she describes tiny things in a really intricate way, and she has like a few things that she's really obsessed with, and she takes these little trinkets around with her, and I just find it very relaxing to read, although I don't like her spitting.
Where's you held up that book and I couldn't quite, because I've got that book. I remember getting it from News from Nowhere, the brilliant bookshop in Liverpool. Oh, Devotion, yeah, that's because I've not read that one yet. I picked it up because News from Nowhere is one of those. Have you been to News from Nowhere?
No.
Oh, it's just this fantastic bookshop in Liverpool that the moment you go in, you go, oh, I need that. Oh, I didn't know that existed, and I need that, and I need that. And because I read Just Kids, which is, and I just think it's still one of my favourite things of all time is watching her forget the words to Hard Rain's Gonna Fall at the Nobel Prize ceremony, because I just think it's so beautiful. That's something that for some reason almost makes me want to cry, because I really love it. I just think it's a really beautiful moment of someone who, even though she later on in the interview said how embarrassing it was and mortified she was, but I think it shows you that sometimes those little moments where, because have you seen it?
No.
She's doing Hard Rain's Gonna Fall, and then she just loses her place, and there's an band all playing, a huge Nobel Prize ceremony. Imagine everyone's in their black tie, and she goes, "Oh, sorry. Can we just start? Can we go from there?" And I love it. Watch it. It's really beautiful. But she has that. Patti Smith's one of those. When you go, why was I listening to some of those bands that the NME recommended in 1992 when I should have been listening to more Patti Smith? This was very foolish of me.
Yeah. I think I listened to far too many men when I was younger, but I think I was so guided by my loins, and now that's all over. So I'm free to enjoy women singing to me and enjoy all the words by women that I should have been enjoying when I was younger, but somehow, had to be like physically attracted to the person to actually listen to what they were saying.
So who are you enjoying? Who at the moment have you kind of either gone to, who's from the past or maybe present artists?
Singing wise,
Yeah.
Oh well, I'm still mostly listening to I'll in the car. Well, I listen to music in the car, mostly Aztec Camera or Al Green or the Proclaimers.
I mean, but apart from those four women, who are the other four women that you're particularly enjoying listening to? I'm glad that you're still guided by your loins, by the way, towards the Proclaimers. I know that was always very much an issue. You've got one Proclaimer on the right bicep, one Proclaimer on the left bicep, as far as I remember, after that tattoo parlour.
I've always liked brothers doing things or twins doing things. So, and so Pat and Greg Kane and the Proclaimers, what are they called? Craig and obviously Matt and Luke. Gosh, Looty, piss off.
That's the cat, by the way, in case anyone's wondering what that sound was. But I think they'd have been able to work it out on this week's Guess the Sound on Josie and Robin's Book Shambles. That's interesting, yeah. So, yeah, Pat and Luke Kane, the Proclaimers, Jeremy Irons in Dead Ringers, obviously.
Jeremy Irons and Jeremy Irons' son in...
Danny, Champion of the World.
Danny, the Champion of the World. Meredith and I enjoyed that the other day. Yeah, maybe I am still completely guided by my loins.
Yeah, it turns out that it's not over yet.
No.
I would suggest that this weekend you go straight to the moors with your longest shoes, and I think it's the only thing that's going to get... once you've got your long shoes on the moors, you're going to be fine. Thank you so much for doing Book Shambles. I'm going to say again, this is such a good book. Now, the best ways... What is the best way of people getting this? Because it's an unbound book.
It's an unbound book. You can get it on... Obviously, Amazon. You can get it from Waterstones, Blackwell's. The big bookshops will have it, and some little bookshops will have it, or they can order it in. So the usual places.
Well, your friend forever, Zena Barry. I really, really, really recommend it, and it is. And I, like I said, I think what I like about it is there are bits that are properly funny, and then it takes you into other places as well, and it's, I won't give away anything about it, but I also think there'll be an enormous number of people, because of the way that you write about being a teenager, and then as you get older as well, I think there'll be a lot of people that will find themselves reading it and then going, oh man, that's reminded me of when I used to send letters to Alistair Burnett after he'd appeared on the ITN News. So thank you very much, everyone, for listening as well. Thank you very much to our producer, Trent Burton. Josie will be back at some point soon. And as I said, don't forget, I'm still on my 100 bookshop tour as well. I've got, depending on whether this goes out, but towards the end of it, I've got two gigs in Hull, actually. I'm doing one for Wrecking Ball Press, who've got a venue now. And Wrecking Ball Press published the books of Barney Farmer, who I've mentioned many times before, who is also a great writer of Viz, Drunken Baker's Mail Online, etc. So I'm going to be in Hull, and I'm going to be in Hexham, and I'm going to be in Saltburn, and I'm going to be in Stockton, and I'm going to be in Newcastle, and I'm going to be in Linlithgow, amongst other places. Thanks for listening. I hope you have a lovely week. Bye-bye.
Yes, Robin and Zena's books are available now. Go out and get those. Support us on Patreon at patreon.com/bookshambles. Rate, review, like, subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Acast, wherever you listen to the show. Back next week with another new episode. Our guest next week should be the comedy historian Louis Barth, and we're talking to him about his new book about Morecambe and Wise. Until then, have a great week. Stay safe. We'll see you soon.
This podcast is part of the Cosmic Shambles Network. Josie and Robin's Book Shambles was produced by Trent Burton of Trunkman Productions.